There we go. All right, well, welcome out today. Welcome out to the webinar here. Let me just get this thing started and perfect. There we go. All right, well, welcome out. I know we've got some new people with us this week. We've got actually a number of people on the webinar. So what are we going to talk about? What are we going to focus on? I wanted to talk a little bit about over-the-counter opportunities and what you can find with some of the over-the-counter opportunities that are out there. So there's some good stuff that we're going to cover today. Feel free to ask questions at any point during the webinar. During certain portions, just like during this portion where I've got the slides, I can't see the questions, but as soon as we get back out of the slides here, I'll be able to see the questions and we can answer any questions. Really, questions make for the best trainings, I think. So in terms of starting points here, well, let me just back up here for a second because I know we've got some new people. Although I think everybody that's here, I think I've talked to here recently. My name's Ferre. I conduct the webinars every week, usually with Steve Swenson. He's my business partner. He may be joining us here at some point during the webinar. We've been conducting these webinars every week for a long time. We provide the training. We got involved with tax sales a long time ago. You know, we're business partners. We're also cousins, Steve and I. And so we've been palling around together for a long time. This was something that we started together a long time. Really, though, over the course of the last 15 years since then, really, there's never been a better time than now. It's interesting, you know, 5 years ago, I thought that the opportunities were really good. I thought, wow, this is amazing. You know, I really saw what was happening with the internet as kind of opening floodgates. And I just saw all this opportunity, and I thought, wow, you know, there couldn't be a better time to start than now. But I think that it's better now than it was even 5 years ago. So it's a good time to start. Let's talk about what it is we're going to be starting with. We're going to go under the assumption that people understand what tax liens, tax deeds are. You know, a basic understanding of them. There are three ways that you can purchase either tax liens or tax deeds, whatever it is. There are three primary ways. You've got live auctions, online auctions, or over-the-counter. Really, this simplifies things if you can just break it down to the most simple terms here. Three systems. The only additions to that I can think of, you know, there's mail-in bidding, but that's kind of something that works in conjunction with live auctions. There are a lot of live auctions that will take mail-in bids from bidders. It's sometimes known as sealed bidding. They will accept bids and essentially open the bids up at the time of the auction and treat that amount as a bid. So that's the only addition to that. But for the most part, we've got every purchase method covered. Now, over-the-counter investing is one that we get a lot of questions about, and rightly so. There's a lot of opportunity with over-the-counter investing. What exactly is it? Let's just make sure everybody understands completely. It's essentially any county-held tax lien or deed, meaning that the lien or deed was offered at a tax sale but wasn't sold. So if it was offered at some point but doesn't sell, it goes back on the books. If counties decide to offer those directly to the public, we call that over-the-counter investing. Purchasing liens or deeds directly from the county, that's what we refer to as over-the-counter investing. But it's not like that's a general term that everybody in the industry uses. If you talk to a county about over-the-counter investing, you're probably not going to understand what you mean by that. Terms in general are pretty confusing. We talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago. Traditional live tax sales are still what make up the majority of the sales. All right, that's important to remember. I mean, probably 90% or more of the tax sales that take place are live auctions that people have to be there in person in order to attend. So what that means is that the majority of the tax sales are still limited by people's ability to show up there at the sale in person. What that means is that property, counties have a lot of leftover property. At least some counties do. you can't really lay a blanket statement like that over all counties because you find all different types of counties. But uh, in general, if you're looking at the nation as a whole, and you're looking and saying 90% of these sales are still being held as live sales, then a certain portion of those don't do that well and haven't done that well for years. Also, as population increases, one thing you'll find, speaking back of new things, on the county website, I mean, not on the county, on the student website on propertytaxlist.com, we'll give you a chance to look at it a little bit later, but we're adding a lot of new videos. Um, when In fact, the reason I mentioned that is because we're adding videos on a lot of different topics. When you get a chance, go to some of the different videos and keep watching. I think we're adding lots and lots of videos throughout the week, so keep an eye out on that. There's a lot of videos there. If you haven't been there recently, then there's probably a lot of new content there. But as I was saying, though, the reason I mentioned it was because I put up a training a few days ago just about using NACO.org. That's the National Association of Counties website, and we use that to locate county information oftentimes. But one of the valuable things you can do with that is you can see what the population for counties was, back in 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010. So you can see what the whether it has a trend of growth, whether it's been stagnant, and as populations increase, the number of properties increase as well, and that means that the number of properties being offered at the sales increases. So, really, what's happened even over the last 10 to 20 years is that populations have increased pretty dramatically. So that means we've got more properties than ever, and it's only getting bigger. And as the big lists, as the number of deeds being offered increases, or the number of liens being offered increases, that also increases the chances that you're going to have a lot of leftover property. The bigger the list is, typically the bigger the list of leftovers. So before we dig into some of these, because I want to show some examples here, um, let's first just talk about the different reasons why they can become over the counter, because it's important to remember and to keep some of these things in mind when you're dealing with over the counter investments. Essentially, what we're dealing with here when something's over the counter, it was offered to sell, but we really don't know why. That could be for a number of reasons. It could be because a bidder didn't pay, or somehow the transaction occurs. Sometimes counties pull properties too. We see that. It could be because it's not desirable. Maybe the people that were looking at it looked at it and said, "Oh, this is not what I want," and everybody avoided it, and that's why it got left over. That's always a possibility and something to consider. I mean, you have to remember that with the over-the-counter lists, the one real downside is that they've been offered before, so a lot of the best properties may have been picked up, or a lot of the good properties. It sort of depends on the size of the list and how much competition was at the sale. And another reason why, just something interesting to note, but multiple sales. The way that state laws are set up, for some reason, it's kind of dumb. Utah had it set up like this for a long time, where all of the counties would hold the tax sale on almost the same day of the month every year. So everybody held their annual sale almost on the same day. So if you're a local investor, you basically can only attend one or two sales. You really can't make it to all the sales, which is so foolish if you think about it, because it basically is only going to hurt your overall turnout if you're relying on people to show up and every other county is holding their sale on the same day. That's another reason why maybe sales might not be, why properties might not get purchased. I mean, keep in mind when you're dealing with counties that you're dealing with a government agency, and that they've never really if the tax sale was what was required in order for that county to survive, like a private business, then they would have that thing turned into something more like eBay. I mean, it would be a nice, smooth system, and that's what we see some counties doing. But traditionally, counties are not really known for making things easy or doing things well. Certainly not really known for selling. Counties are not really sales oriented. They're pretty much will post things. They do what's legally required, and that's about it. And that's probably all they really should do. Um, but once they have those leftover properties, they have a couple of different options. They can keep the properties and offer them subsequent sales, or they can offer them directly to the public. Um, in subsequent sales, they may call the property something different. They may have different terms for the sales that they're going to hold, but when or they may have different terms also for when the property is actually made available to the public. For instance, I think we'll get a chance here to talk about it. But I was talking with somebody today about some properties in Texas, and they were talking about the struck off properties, and it just reminds me, struck off properties in Texas are the properties that have been offered at probably multiple sales, and that the county has essentially decided to sell, over the counter directly to the public. And in some cases, if they get desperate enough, they'll even lower what's required in taxes. So rather than taking the minimum bid, which is what's owed in taxes, they'll drop that minimum bid down to $1,000 or $100. A lot of counties do this type of thing when they're trying to get rid of all of their properties, because ultimately anything they've got left over is just money that they're missing. So let's talk for just a second here about some pretty neat things here I found with over-the-counter investing. Okay, how about over-the-counter tax liens? We're at that time of year where there are a lot of lien sales being held. The ability to earn 18% is pretty difficult to do. One of the advantages, though, of over-the-counter investing is that you don't have any competition, so you automatically earn the maximum interest rate return. That's a major benefit, because, well, I guess as far as not having the competition. Normally, if you were attending the auction, you would have to compete with somebody on liens, and a lot of the counties will use the interest rate as the bidding medium. So the person that's willing to accept the lowest interest rate wins. And that can be a problem if you're bidding against others, and you're starting off at 18%. But if the winning bidder is willing to accept a very low amount, then you can see how it would hurt the overall return on the investment quite a bit. However, with over-the-counter investments, we don't have that competition, so we automatically earn the state maximum, the maximum interest rate return in the state, which in the case we're going to look at here with some of these over-the-counter Florida properties, is 18%. So basically, it's 18% guaranteed. It's a guaranteed interest rate return of 18%. It's secured by property. If you think about it, there really are just not too many ways out there that you can earn 18%. The average, in fact, I think if maybe some of you have retirement accounts that you've been investing into for a long time. Maybe you keep track of what your yields are on a year-to-year basis. What your returns are. But for investors trying to invest, 18% is nearly impossible to do, especially today. And to have anything like that would be considered safe is well, it's unheard of in most cases. What I'd like to show everybody, I'm going to show first in slides here, and then we'll switch over and just kind of go to a live demonstration. But with the slides, I can have a little bit more control. What we're going to do, and what I want to show everybody is just basically how we would get here from the student website. So if you were to go to propertytaxlist.com and you went to the online auctions page, it's going to pull up the page. Looks like this. What we're interested in are the list of auction companies and websites down there. The Grant Street Group is the one that we're interested in for this particular example. Grant Street Group, they offer some different online auctions, but it's a little bit different format than what you'll find with some of the other counties. They also do a lot of lien sales. Let me show you what happens when The Grant Street Group page that you'll click on, when it comes up, it's going to look like this. And what this shows are some of the different auctions or tax sales that they're having. However, they also, so Grant Street Group holds the auctions, the online sales for these, for a lot of Florida counties and some counties in other states. They hold their annual lien sales, but also afterwards, when there are leftover liens, they offer those liens over the counter, and you can essentially buy it through their website. It's a really easy, simple system. So if tax liens are what you're interested in, which when we're talking about tax liens, keep in mind that we're talking about trying to earn high interest rate returns on a safe investment. Tax liens tend to be a little bit more of a long-term investment. They can be, it can take, well, in some cases, upwards of a couple of years. I've had liens that have taken 4 years. It's about the longest I've had them take. But of course, that's something you plan on when you go into it. When you go into tax liens, the plan going into it is that this is a long-term investment, and I'm earning a high interest rate return, and I want to earn that for as long as I can. With that being the case, to have it go longer duration is actually a really good thing. With these properties here, these are everything that was left over from some of these Florida sales. The term that they've got here, county held, is their way of saying over the counter. That's one of the things that's confusing about tax sales in general, is just the lack of any uniformity. There's no uniform system. There are no terms that are even universal. If you said over the counter to most of these county officials, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. But that's because they have their own terminology. And county held certificates, they would know what you're talking about there. And their county held certificates is just their way of saying the ones that they have issued themselves, essentially. That's what the counties do in a lot of cases. They'll issue the lien to them, to themselves if nobody buys it. Now, what we're going to do, what I want to show you here is how we would navigate some of this, and how we can determine, with these being over-the-counter liens, how we can determine which ones are good investments, which ones aren't, and how we can know that. So if we were to click on this first, on the first link, the first page that comes up looks like this, and this is sort of their home page for the over-the-counter properties that they have available. It's almost like they've got their own little website for it. So there are some instructions on this first page about what you would need to do, and really very simple instructions for registering with the website, and then filling out the form you've got there. They basically say fill out an IRS form, W-9 or W-8. The reason for that is because when you earn returns through tax sales, the counties report that to the IRS. It's just part of normal earnings reportings. So that's essentially the only thing that's really required. The only thing you have to have in order to participate in an auction is a social security number or a tax ID number. But essentially, you can fill out one of those forms, register on the website, and then you can pay for these. It says by electronic check. It's basically ACH debit. They can basically debit the amount from an account, which makes it really convenient. A lot of this stuff is getting more and more convenient. So once we, the option on the left-hand side underneath the county held certificates up here at the top, it says view/purchase certificates. That's what we want to click on to view the list of over-the-counter tax liens that they have. Now, the list is going to come up and look like this. There are a couple of things to take note of here that are interesting. First off, you can see the information that we've got. It says tax year, issue date, certificate number, account, purchase amount. those each one of those fields you can reorganize just by clicking on. So if you click on a purchase amount, you can reorganize all of these liens according to amount. So let's say that you're looking for, well, really for a lot of people that may be investing into liens heavily, maybe they've got they're trying to invest a large sum. Maybe they're trying to invest 50 or 100,000, and so doing so, they're going to be looking for liens. They're not going to want to probably spend a lot of their time with the $500 liens. They're going to be looking at the liens placed against more valuable property. And I'll explain to you why that actually increases the overall security. In fact, the safest way to invest in tax liens is just to buy tax liens against really nice property. So we can reorganize that amount, that based on the amounts, if we wanted to make it easier for us to search through this list. But on the left-hand side, there's some interesting things to take note of. You can see, probably should have those arrows a little further down. Under the certificates issued, and then certificates redeemed, and certificates outstanding, you start to get an idea here of how their over-the-counter system works. And I'll show you here an example. It'll make more sense here. What I did, I clicked on the purchase amount and just basically made that so it went from higher priced liens down, and so the highest priced lien there was $2,000, and you can see the certificate number there. The arrow's pointing to. When I click on that, so I pull up this $2,000 over-the-counter tax lien to see what it is. And this is the property record. This is a portion of the county record that comes up. It gives us some basic information. So let's evaluate what it is that we're looking at here, and let's talk about how exactly we would evaluate that. Now, first, interesting note. When I said it's an 18% return guaranteed, and you can see right there, the interest rate return 18%. Now, when I say guaranteed, I guess I always hesitate to say guaranteed. I don't say very often, because most likely, the 18%, if it earns a return, meaning when the property owner pays off their taxes and you get a check from the county, you'll earn that full 18%. The only, I guess, the only thing to add to that is that that's of course dependent upon the property owner paying off the taxes. If they don't, then you have to still go through the foreclosure process, which in Florida, the county does prior to holding a tax deed sale. So the county actually forecloses on properties that go past the redemption period, which they then offer at a sale. And they'll use the proceeds from the property, if they sell it, to pay off the lien holder. Now, if they don't sell it at the auction, let's say it doesn't get a minimum bid, then the property ends up going to the certificate holder. And we've seen a lot of examples of that lately. Different auctions, when we're looking at auction results, and we see who buys, it's either a third-party buyer, or it goes back to the certificate holder. And we've seen a lot of them that go back to the certificate holder, meaning that the person ends up getting the property in the deal. That's normally the common thing to happen is for people to pay off their taxes. That's what happens the vast majority of the time. The fact that you can use liens to foreclose on a property usually doesn't become an issue, because properties always end up redeeming. But we've seen a lot of cases where the lien holders end up as the property owners in the end. Some other things to take note of here. We've got a property address that's listed right there. Which, whenever you see a property address, that's always something to take note of and to probably copy. And as you scroll down, you can see the tax balance, then the assessed value. Now, on this property, then you see down below that, it says the certificate it's redeemed and the certificate's outstanding. First up, there are a number of warning bells that would go off, with this property for me. What are some of those? What are some of those alarms that would go off? First off, the assessed value, the taxable value for a $2,000 lien, a $36,000 assessed value is not a very high value. Now that in and of itself wouldn't be enough, because you could look and see that you could look and find out that the property has an assessed value of or an estimated value on Zillow of 70,000. Maybe the county's estimate is low, so you couldn't just discount it on that alone. But we would want to look a little bit deeper into it to see what we could find out. But the certificates issued, the certificates redeemed, and the certificates outstanding, uh, that's a little bit concerning. Why? Well, certificates are issued on an annual basis. So a tax lien certificate represents 1 year's worth of taxes, penalties, and fees. To have seven, certificates outstanding means you have 7 years of delinquent taxes, that are owed on this property, that's still owed. Now, when they have these properties offered like this, what they do essentially with over-the-counter liens like this is they are adding up the total amount that's owed on the property, and meaning all of the liens are added up together, and that's how they come up with the total purchase price is the total liens. And so if you've got a whole bunch of liens, then that's going to increase the amount when the property the property was probably eligible for foreclosure a long time ago. So that also just makes you ask questions. Makes you wonder why wasn't this property foreclosed on a long time ago? If it has 7 years worth of taxes that are still outstanding, why would that be the case? And with a $2,000 investment, it's a big enough investment that you want to do your homework on this. Not a ton of it. You wouldn't have to do hours of homework, but a couple minutes at least to see what it is. If we were to click on the tax collector's website, that link down there on the bottom, it will give us a whole bunch of information to look at and to review. And this is kind of interesting, the way that they've got this set up. What we're looking at here, this is the county property record. And county property records are, well, let's see, what can we say about county property records? Counties have the best records for the property of anybody, because they essentially have had records of the property before there was anything on it. It was just raw land. They're essentially the only ones really keeping record of a lot of this information. How they provide that information is really dependent upon the county and how they've come about to provide it. Well, I guess this kind of sounds odd, but it's not like the counties are all working together. The way that counties do things is kind of dependent upon the way they used to do things, and the way things were done before then. And every county seems to have their own way. So the websites differ, and the way information is provided differs. So a lot of the challenge sometimes is learning how to decipher that. Learning how to look at different sites but see the same things. So we're looking at the parcel details here. Just an interesting note. On the right-hand side where the arrow's pointing, it says full bill history. We can see the entire billing history on this property if we wanted. To the left of that, though, you can see that we've got these years. It says 2002, 2010, 11, 12, 13. And then you can see to the left of that, you've got the account balance, so you basically have the full account balance, and you've got some of the property details down below that. You've got an overhead map of it. Well, the account balance immediately, that's sort of what answers my the questions that I had when the alarm bells were going off about the property. The account balance on the property is like $18,000, $18,700. And this lien is for $2,000. If nobody's foreclosed on the property, in all this time, there's all these outstanding liens, then at this point, there's just too much owed in taxes to really make it a good deal. And even though, you could buy that lien for the $2,000, it wouldn't be a good investment. Because in the end, if nobody steps forward to pay off the delinquent taxes, what do you have to do? Well, you're going to have to foreclose on it, or the county's going to have to foreclose on it. If you were to buy this lien, then the county would be forced to foreclose on it. But they would end up offering it at an auction, and if it sold at auction, well, then they would pay you back. If it didn't sell at auction, then they would give you the property. So getting the property is a possibility when you're dealing with over-the-counter investing, over-the-counter liens. That's something to consider. Is that the chances of getting the property are increased when you buy over-the-counter. So that would immediately tell me, that this property's got major problems, and I would want to avoid it just by looking at the amount that is owed. I think that it would basically put you in a situation where you could get your money tied up for a while. I think it would be a bad overall investment into a piece of property. And so what were the warning signs that we saw? Well, the value that it had right on that first page of $35,000, that's a low value for a lien, that's $2,000. A lien for $2,000, again, just representing a single year's worth of delinquent taxes. Typically, if you're looking at bid to value ratios for liens, they're a lot lower than what they typically are with deeds. Whenever we talk about tax deeds and the bid to value ratio, the opening, and that's the ratio, the opening bid ratio compared to the estimated value. We're always talking about that 10%, or 10 or 15% being, it's kind of that sweet spot with tax deed properties. With tax liens, though, you're only looking at a single year's worth of taxes rather than multiple years worth of taxes and foreclosure. So, it's not uncommon for liens to have a bid to value ratio or a lien to value ratio, I guess you could say, that's under 5%. It might just be a couple percent of what the property's estimated to be worth. I mean, if you think about it, it should just be what's owed in taxes for 1 year. So what do you normally pay in taxes, on a property? Well, property taxes, it will depend on what the property tax rate is for the county. But you could say 1%, if you were just trying to go with some kind of an average amount, meaning, if most seem to think maybe closer to 2%, 1 to 2%, you could essentially say. Meaning, if you had, let's say, $100,000 home, you'd probably pay between $1,000 and $2,000 a year in taxes. Well, keep that in mind, and remember that when you're looking at these over-the-counter liens, if they represent a year's worth of delinquent taxes, then you should be able to get some idea of what the property value is, or a reflection of it. And so when the lien to value ratio goes up too high, if you have liens that are at 10 or 15 or 20%, that's where you have to start to keep an eye out. And it doesn't mean necessarily that it's a bad investment. If it was at 10%, that wouldn't necessarily be terrible if it was the right property. But usually the lower the lien to value ratio, the better. Just kind of show you. This is just that bill history page. What's interesting is that we can see a complete history on this property, and they've made it pretty easy to navigate if we wanted to see, what the history was on what's been paid with taxes and what hasn't been paid. Yeah, I see a lot of problems with buying this particular tax lien. And by the way, I mentioned before, grab the address. You can use the address. Well, I plugged in the address and looked at it, and this was this is the property. So it's an over-the-counter tax lien for $2,000, but there's like $18,000 to $20,000 that's owed on it, meaning that when the county goes to foreclose on it, if they have an opening bid amount of $18,000, nobody's going to buy that. At least I don't think anybody's going to buy it for $18,000. And as a lien holder, one of the requirements in order to foreclose on properties as well, this is important, is that the taxes have to be current. So if you want to foreclose on a property, let's say you take property through the foreclosure process, in order to foreclose on it, there can't be any existing liens against the property. So that means the property taxes have to be current. You can't buy the property, you can't transfer ownership of the property and have delinquent taxes. They make sure that all the taxes are current at that point. Um, let's see here. Oh, I just lost my. Sorry here. Back up a little bit. I lost my train of thought. I did pick up. I wanted to show you another example of what a better example might be. I ended up going to a different county to find find different variety of liens. It's interesting to go through and do a lot of this too. Anyway, I went to Charlotte County and I did the same thing where I'm going to look at the amounts based on the purchase amount because I want to weed out some of the low dollar liens. And by the way, buying liens, if you've never bought anything before, it might be a good idea to buy a smaller tax lien. If you were to buy $100 tax lien, I promise you that what you'll learn just by doing it will make it worth it. Regardless of what the lien does. If the lien, which if you pick out a good one, it very well could redeem anyway. Even for the lowest price ones. But in fact, why exactly is that? Why is it that the lowest price liens may not redeem? Well, again, it's all about property value. So the lower the lien amount, the lower the overall property value. And what you run into with really low valued property is a lot of it may be junk land or useless land because nobody's willing to buy it. Really something's only worth what people are willing to pay for it, and the county may attach a value to that property. They may say that it's worth, $1,500 or $2,000, but in reality, if it doesn't have any use, then nobody's going to buy it for anything. And you find a lot of property like that through these sales. Well, the problem that you really face is looking out for those types of properties and trying to focus on the properties that have significant value. And the reason for that is because this investment really depends upon two things. First would be the property owner paying off, their delinquent tax bill. So that would all depend on how much they want their property. The second one is to consider is the property itself, and that's because in the worst case scenario or best case scenario, you end up foreclosing or getting the property. So if you pick your liens based on the property, as if knowing that basically you're looking at the properties as you're buying liens, and you're picking out your liens based on that, based on the idea that you could foreclose on this property and end up owning it, then you should be safe. And if that ever happens, sometimes foreclosing on a property would be the absolute best thing that could happen because you're foreclosing on a property that you've acquired for a very low amount, and you'll own outright. It's a total home run. Okay, so this one right here, I wanted to show just another example. Let's look at some others here. This certificate right here that we click on, it has a high amount. It was the biggest one that was on here, but I thought it was kind of interesting. The tax year, if you notice, the tax year is for 2012, meaning that it's not very old. That's always a sign that maybe it's a better quality lien. The older the liens are, I mean, if it's a lien, if you're looking at liens that were issued years and years ago, they may have been on the books for a long time. You have to wonder, why hasn't somebody stepped in and done something about it? Why hasn't it been purchased? Why is it still on the books from a sale that took place so long ago? And that doesn't mean you can't find good deals there, but there are a lot of important questions to ask whenever you're looking at properties. They're the kinds of questions that help you identify problems. So the newer the tax year, the more recently it was issued, the fresher the property is. I think the higher the chances that it's a good property that hasn't been gone through yet. This is something that essentially just came in from, or more recently would have come in from on the over-the-counter list. So if we were to click on that amount, sorry, not on the amount, but on the certificate number to pull up to see what this property is, we can see numbers that look a lot better and that don't give any warning signs, any warning bells. Now, of course, the amount's high, but Just as a general note, looking at the numbers, these numbers work a lot better. The tax balance on this, it says it's $62,000. This is like a $76,000 tax lien, but the market value on the property is $2.25 million. And let's see here. So the property has a really high value to it. It's got a great assessed. I mean, it's got a good high assessed value, which those numbers work quite a bit better. When you're looking at the over the counter liens, that should be the whole idea with the lien is that you can take a lien for a relatively small amount, and it can take an entire property and use that as security for this delinquent amount. That's sort of what the power, it's the power the liens have. They have the ability to take that entire property. If we were to look at the tax collector's website on this one, what we can see here is oh, that's interesting. Well, this one, I don't know if this one well, it would all depend on what this property is and how much you wanted to buy it. But this property, if you look at it, what exactly is this property? If you notice here on the bottom right, you can see that it's located in like a golf club, country club resort. The map and where it places it on the map, it basically says Building 16. In the situs. And it also has quite a bit of land to it. You'll notice on the millage rate, I believe that's the acreage. So I think that this is on 16.9 acres. But anyway, something that I just saw that was really interesting though is up on the in green, you can see that pay all, and it looks like if this property has had if it has had 80,000 in taxes owed year after year. Well, it'd be interesting to see more about this property, and what it is. In some cases, the county, I guess some of the properties that are out there may have taxes way more owed in taxes than what the properties are worth, and that's because of the nature of property taxes. They never stop. They always keep coming, and whether you're late, whether they're on time, whether just property taxes are always going, they're always there. And so that amount just continues to add up. So I think it's important when you're looking at properties, look into the history a little bit, especially like with these with these over the counter liens. Also, first position liens, that's probably something to mention. A first position lien is that is the first year that the lien is issued against a property, and first position liens are important because they're going to have the first foreclosure rights on the property. So in other words, in Florida, you've got a 2-year redemption period. That means that the county, can issue two liens on, two different liens on a property before it might be eligible for foreclosure. Maybe even they'll be into the third one, by the time it's issued. But what that really means, though, is when the first lien is purchased, well, let's say the county holds a sale, and that the sale is conducted, the first lien is purchased. Well, the next year, so 1 year later, if the lien hasn't been paid off, chances are they haven't been paying the property taxes at all. So there may be another lien that would be issued against the property, a second lien. If you bought the first lien, normally the county will contact you or give you the first rights to purchase this, that second lien, and they will, you'll make the maximum interest rate return if you decide to buy it. that works out well for the county. It's convenient for them. It also works out well for the investor if you're interested in acquiring the property. And that's because you've got to pay off those taxes, and it's got to be current in order to foreclose. So once if you wanted to foreclose on it and it had delinquent taxes that were owed, the county would say, okay, well, this is how much is owed in taxes. So if if you want us to award ownership, then you're going to have to pay off this amount. But in a lot of cases, what that would be. So let's say you purchased that first lien, but you didn't buy the second lien. You passed on it. But then you wanted to foreclose on the property. Well, there would be a certain amount that was still owed in taxes that you would need to pay, and that would represent the other lien that you essentially didn't buy. If you would have bought both liens, at the time, then you would essentially have already paid all of the taxes that were owed, so you would have the right to foreclose on it. You've already paid all the bills, but they do that to protect the lien holders as well. It's also just the nature of a lien. You can't transfer ownership as long as the lien exists. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I can see questions now. We can kind of switch over here so we can do some example stuff. You're not required to purchase that second lien. That's not a requirement. It's just it's something that the county will give you the opportunity to do. It's also one of those things when you start investing in a county. It's easy to go and return to the same county and invest again to reinvest. You'll save tons of time going back to the same county, returning AS to the same county. But it works out well for everybody that's involved. It's reason why the county offers it to the lien holder is because they understand that in order to foreclose, the lien holder is going to have to pay off any taxes that are owed, which is going to include this second lien. So if the lien holder doesn't buy it, that's fine. Somebody else will buy it. But if they want to foreclose on the property, they have to keep in mind that there may be still taxes owed that they've got to pay in order to foreclose on it. But yeah, they're not required to. They're not required to buy that. It's a good opportunity to do though. I mean, it's a good thing to do. I think when you get the chance. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm just reading over some of the questions here. Okay, here's a good question. So if I purchased, two liens in Florida on paper, would I be able wouldn't I be able to foreclose immediately, even though I just purchased both liens all at one time? That actually is something that happens with over-the-counter liens as far as foreclosure, but not necessarily in Florida. And I'll kind of give you an idea why. And what we're talking about here is in other words, if a property has let's say a 3-year redemption period. So they've got a 3-year redemption period, and the lien is over the counter, and it's been sitting on the books for 3 years. Wouldn't I have the power to couldn't you go in and buy that lien after it's been sitting on the books for 3 years? And if it's been past that redemption period, then couldn't you automatically start foreclosing? And the answer is yes. If the redemption period is passed, you'll find over-the-counter properties all the time that would be eligible for foreclosure. But part of what's going to hold you up just a little bit will be the way that state laws are written. When state laws when they dictate what the redemption period is going to be on a property, so when they dictate that 3-year redemption period or that 2-year redemption period, the way that a lot of the counties, way that a lot of the states have the laws written, the foreclosure, the redemption period will basically be worded something like this. It'll say that the redemption period is 24 months, or it'll say 24 months or 60 days or 90 days from the date foreclosure, or from the date that the foreclosure is filed or the foreclosure intent is made. What they basically are trying to do there is protect property owners from a situation where they've had property that's been on the books for a long time and could just be foreclosed on really quickly. They still want to try to give somebody a short heads up, about the foreclosure, and so they'll usually put that little ad on there. They'll basically say that that the redemption period is going to be either 2 years or at least 60 days, from the time where, that foreclosure intent is filed. So what it would mean is that no longer, no matter how long it's on the books, if you suddenly want to foreclose on the property, they're going to get, 30 or 60 days or something like that to pay off, the taxes. So the redemption period will still give them a little bit of time. It's not enough time to make it so that it's not a good way to pursue investments. But it is just enough of a time to allow them, allow people to redeem and to not feel like the property was just suddenly taken. Let's see here. Now, what's really interesting about this, let's switch over here. I'm just going to do. We're going to go to the student website, and I'll just kind of show you some of these and how we would get there. I'm going to make this bigger here so you can see this. Okay, so here we are. We're looking at the student website. If I wanted to go to, let's maybe log in. So I clicked on the online auctions page. I can zoom this in just a little bit if it makes it a little easier to see. So for any of you that are interested in a really easy way to buy liens, let's say you're just looking to kind of get started, you want to get your feet wet, you want to do something, 18% is a pretty good overall interest rate return no matter how you look at it. But it doesn't have to be a big amount. You can take, you can just make baby steps, do what you're comfortable with, and buy something, that's a low dollar amount just to go through the experience of it. When the first auction I attended, that was actually what I did. I wanted to buy some things just to kind of go through the experience of it, and so I ended up buying some really low price tax liens, like $67. I think it was the first lien that I bought. But you learn so much more than that $67 could ever pay for. The lien ended up redeeming anyway, but you learn a ton just by going through the experience of it. Okay, so we're looking here at the list of online auction companies and websites. What we're interested in here is in Grant Street Group, right here. They do auctions for Arizona, Florida, Maryland. A lot of these companies are adding new states all the time. So we're going to click on that. Let me enlarge this a bit. Okay, so what you can see, why is it doing that? Oh, just scroll down. Okay, here are the different counties that have county-held certificates, and all of the sites that they use are pretty well the same. It's just a matter of what information they have included. So we could look at any of these based on. Well, let's just look at let's say Highland County. This is the page that comes up. It's kind of like their home page. This has all the instructions for registering, or just basically how to register on the site, and then so you can buy stuff. But it's super easy. What's important to do is just to do some homework on it, on any of the properties you're interested in. So we're looking at the list here, and as you can see, in the beginning, it's I think they probably have it according to a certificate number, but we can change it just by clicking on the amount here. So we could go from lowest to highest, which you can see some of the liens here are as small as $12. And it looks like the highest price liens they have are about $9,000. And a lot of times we end up avoiding the lowest ones just because a lot of times they end up being against well, they just end up being junk property. The lowest price liens are. But let's take a look and see. We can see what year the taxes were issued. So if I were looking at this, looking for something that was more recent, any of these would actually look pretty good. So we could say, let's just click on this very first one for 9,000. Let's see what it does. Okay, so we can see here right off the bat, market value 42,000. Certificates issued 8, certificates redeemed 5. So there's only 2 outstanding. That's that's not too bad. Let's see what the property is, and also I'm going to copy the address while I'm there. In fact, a lot of times the fastest way is just to go up and to plug in an address to see what something is. Okay, so interesting. By the way, we use Google Maps for all of our mapping, or Google Earth. If you download that, you can download that app and use the app separately. I just end up using the one that they have online because it's the one they're keeping updated and accurate all the time. Plus, it's just convenient to be able to pull it up. Looking at this from a satellite view, you can see that this appears just to be raw land, but we can see where it's located at. I'm not sure if that's what the property is or not just yet, but we can find out. But a purchase price of $10,000 and an assessed value that's that low does not, that's not very. Assessed value 63,000. Now, if you were buying this though, I guess if you were looking at the at the overall value of the property, the numbers aren't as good as a lot of others. But if you were looking at it as a chance to maybe acquire the property, it may be pretty good. I mean, you would essentially earn either 18% on your $10,000, or you get the chance to foreclose on the property. Of course, one thing to look at though is to foreclose on it. Would it cost you another $10,000? Are you? Yeah, just looking at this, I think that that would possibly be the case. If they're charging $8,000 for a year's worth of taxes, or if that's what's owed, looks like tax bill $6,400. Seems like a really high amount for that low of an assessed value. And that may be why people aren't paying their taxes. That's one thing that you find sometimes is when you look at properties and you're like, oh, that seems like that's really messed up. And then you think, well, no wonder. Of course nobody's paying their taxes on this. It's because the county's overvalued this property, or this property doesn't really have any use, and they're expected to pay, $7,000-8,000 a year in property taxes. You can see how properties end up, going to the county, end up getting foreclosed on. The accuracy of that county assessment is pretty valuable. You can also see the total amount they're saying that's owed right here is $28,000 in taxes. And so if the property, well, we'd have to see what it's worth, but it'd have to be worth a lot more than that in order to make that good as far as a lien investment. That's another thing to consider too. Is when you buy by buying the lien, if you look at it and you say, okay, well, if worst case scenario, I foreclose on the property, that should be a very appealing thing. In this case, where you've got $28,000 owed on this property, and it looks like it's worth 40 something thousand. That's all dependent too upon whether or not it really has use and somebody's willing to buy it. But looking at this, has $28,000 owed. That's the total bill, and so to pay $10,000 of it seems risky. that seems pretty risky. You'd want to have much higher values. Let's see. All right, now let's take a look. A lot of these. That's another issue with over the counter, or I guess something to mention with over the counter is that over the counter investing, it works and there's a lot of opportunity that's out there, but you've got to do a lot more digging, and you've got to do more due diligence or more research. I mean, basically, when you approach over the counter investing, you almost have to treat every property suspiciously. I don't know if that makes sense. Sometimes with sales, you can, they have all their properties, and you can start to see that most of their properties are pretty good. They have mostly all single-family homes listed, and so you take your guard down a little bit. But when you're dealing with over-the-counter, tax liens or over-the-counter tax deeds, you really kind of have to have your guard up when you're looking at the research side of it, because you have to remember that they're there possibly for a reason. It may be just because there weren't enough people at the sale, but it may be because this property is junk, or this property has way too much owed in taxes compared to what it's worth. So I think those are important things to think about and consider. When you're dealing with over-the-counter liens, you can make that high interest rate return. You just want to make sure that you're buying a lien against a property that has significant value. Okay, meaning that the value of the property has to heavily outweigh the amount of the lien. It has to be a no-brainer. The person's desire to keep the property has to be high enough that the amount of the lien really just wouldn't have much of an effect. It would be nothing compared to their ability to keep the property. By the way, I've got Steve here. He's sitting here with me, joining us for the. We'll probably wrap up here in the next few minutes. We're also, just if I were to talk about a couple of the things that we're doing with the webinar replays. We found that sometimes people have issues if there's a lack of compatibility. If you try to open up, if Windows Media Player is your default player, I think you can have problems trying to open up some of the replays. And so, to address that issue, I'm going to upload all of the training webinars to YouTube. I can post those; they can stream easily, and you can watch. Everybody can watch it, at least if you have access to the website. But everybody, all of our students here will be able to watch it, and I don't think anybody will have any issues. So. Keep an eye out on there. You'll be able to sit and watch replays of the webinar on the website, or in fact, that'll be the easiest way. We'll just post it up there with a link. We'll do it with a YouTube link that essentially will be an unlisted link, so that the only way you'll be able to view it will be from the website. But we're adding that, and we'll be adding a number of short trainings. One of the things that we're changing a little bit, we're trying to add a lot of short trainings that are very specific towards different questions or topics. So short, specific videos. So if there's something you'd like to have covered, or questions that you have, send us an email, or call us on the hotline. But if you can, send us an email and let us know what what your questions are, what you'd like us to cover. It gives us some great direction when we're looking to produce training, and it also enables us to do something maybe that will help you out. It's nice, I think, if you have a question about something, to get an actual video that's answering directly what your question is, and that's kind of what we'd like to be able to do. So if you have additional questions, please send them in to us, and we'll be sure to get something up there to answer them. But because of that also, though, because we're going to be posting videos up that way, we've got to keep them closer to an hour or under an hour. We're so used to having our webinars go really long. We've always been going for like an hour and a half or longer, but it creates a problem when we try to upload them. And so we're going to try to keep the webinars pretty close to about an hour here to make that easier for everybody to view. So let's see here. Oh yeah, and by the way, the videos, the YouTube ones will be restricted. When you upload on YouTube, you can upload videos so they're essentially private. and they can't be accessed. But at the same time, what's interesting is that YouTube is hands down the best streaming service. We've tried a few different services out there, and nobody can do it quite like YouTube can, and they're free. That's the best part. So as long as we, I think as long as we post those correctly, they'll essentially only be available, inside the student website. But from there, they should work perfectly. So it should make it much easier for people to be able to replay webinars or replay any kind of training. So, yeah, I think with that being said, yeah, I'll tell you what, we'll go and wrap it up here for tonight. I'll be sure to get this replay up, and we'll be posting a lot of other new videos. So we'll keep an eye out for some training topics or questions that you have. But if not, give us a call on the hotline. The hotline number is 801-331-8921, and that operates from 9 to 5 Mountain Time. So have a great evening, everybody, and we'll look forward to talking with you sometime this week or next week.
Have a great week.